I want to be sure we talk about Silver Dollar City. I want to talk about the real hillbillies. I want to talk about the Beverly Hillbillies. I want to talk about the challenges you've had with the great business you've built. And we can start wherever you want to start, but I pretty quickly want to get to your family coming to Missouri.
Well, Roy, I've been thinking about this presentation. I really reflected back. There is a series of what I call hinge points. There are really, everybody has them in their life, where things changed. Something happened that was really different. The first hinge point was my mom and dad, Hugo and Mary Herschend, vacationing. The late 1940s, they came down from Wilmette, Illinois, where we lived, and came down to, essentially, to Rockaway Beach. And from Rockaway Beach, they did some tours out and around, and they ran across two little old ladies. It's not a put down. There were two old maids who owned a cave. And that cave was Marble Cave. And Miss Miriam and Miss Genevieve Lynch were the ladies in question. And I got to tell you, they are two of the most amazing people in the world. Miss Genevieve was 73 and Miss Miriam was 75. Miss Genevieve, the younger of the two, would take 2 and sometimes 3 tours through the cave. You think, well, that's not much. Yes, it was, because it was pine pitch torches or Coleman lanterns. There was no electricity because there was no electricity.
How many steps?
582. 500 down and roughly that many back up.
Maybe more.
And at 73, she would do that 2 and 3 times a day. I asked, most of you would find that a little bit arduous today. She was marvelous. The Lynch sisters were old enough that they were looking for retirement and a way to no longer be the cave ladies. Dad saw that as an opportunity for him to retire into, to have a business to retire into. Long story short, he leased the cave, and in April of 1950, we took over the cave. And it was a small business then. First year, in 1950 season, we had less than 5,000 visitors go through the cave.
And you were coming from the really upscale suburb of Wilmette, Illinois.
Life was pretty comfortable in Wilmette. Running water,
Yeah.
paved streets.
Inside and outside?
Most of the time, yeah. Friends, neighbors, schools, police, fire. Of course, none of that exists. Literally, electricity arrived where you think of Silver Dollar City today, Roy. Electricity arrived at that particular point in 1948. Right. Telephones arrived in 1956. 1956.
And where did you live when you came to Missouri? Did you live at the cave?
We had 2 or 3 small houses.
Not in the cave, but...
No. Jack and I, my brother, my partner, best friend, we thought it was pretty wonderful. Here are 2 guys from Wilmette, Illinois. We were the only kids in our high school whose parents had a cave, I can assure you. And so this was a great adventure. We were cave exploring. We were all over and, got to go hunting and fishing and things that Wilmette guys never got to do. New life.
You finished school in Wilmette?
I finished high school in Wilmette.
And Jack did too.
Yeah, we both graduated high school there. Jack went on to graduate from Northwestern University. I had 2 years at Northwestern, and then 2 years at University of Missouri, graduated here in this town in 1958.
Well, I want to get to 58. I want to get to 55, I believe, is when you lost your dad.
Yep, 1955.
Before that, let's go back to the ladies that ran the cave. Were they typical Ozarks people at the time?
Not quite. Not quite. Miss Miriam, the older of the two, was a trained opera singer. Miss Genevieve was an RN. She was, if anybody here from Carthage, she was an RN at Carthage. When their father, William Henry Lynch, who was the original developer of the cave, that's another, Roy, we don't have enough hours.
I don't have enough time for that.
We're going to do that story. We'll never get out of here. Or bring on dessert, it'll be a long time. William Henry Lynch started the cave in 1894, commercially. Commercial cave in 1894. You can picture what that was like. When my dad died in 1955, he was the financial mainstay of the company, of our company,
Right.
because there wasn't enough business. There was not even close to enough business.
He still worked at,
He worked for the Electrolux Corporation.
he worked in Chicago part of the year.
Yep. Stayed there until 1954.
I'm going to talk about fitting in, but let's talk about that moment. Was that a big decision on the part of your mother particularly to decide we're going to take this barely working dream and move forward, or as opposed to go back to where friends and family were?
I use the term hinge points. That was a hinge point for the personal, for the family, because we had to make a decision to go back to Wilmette, but frankly, go back to what? And the answer was no. We're going to put our stake in the ground here and make this hole in the ground work. And we did.
How'd your mother adjust to the Ozarks?
Tough. Anybody who thinks that it would be easy, Wilmette, some of you may know, is on the north shore of Chicago, a very nice, very comfortable suburb. When we moved to the Ozarks, as I said, there was no electricity, we had the first indoor plumbing in Stone County, Missouri, at least the southern half of Stone County, Missouri. Some people thought we were just way too snooty.
Right. That made you skeptical right there.
I
These people have
promise you, Mary
bathrooms
Herschend didn't
inside.
think that, but
Yeah.
others might have. Jack and I didn't care one way or the other. But
Like the guy who
we
used-
were guys. You know what? It's okay.
Right. But no neighbors really.
We were. There were people talking about those Herschends. They have a toilet. We did, and you know what?
Inside the house even.
Inside, yeah.
Right.
And with running water. And Mr. Brown would, in those days, there was no water mains, didn't exist. Mr. Brown, you picked up the phone? No, there wasn't a phone, I'm sorry. You send a messenger into town and you'd get a hold of Mr. Brown. And Mr. Brown would, in a day or two, bring out 1,500 gallons of water on his truck and put it in your cistern. And you'd pay him a couple bucks, and then that was your drinking water, your bath water, your cooking water, everything, until you needed Mr. Brown again.
So how did you guys fit into the community, and how did your mother have to fit in differently? I know that part of the community of your lives both have been very sort of church focused.
Yeah.
I think that began after you moved to the Ozarks.
That came after our relationship with our Lord Jesus, my brother's life and my life came after both of us were married. And it was our wives that brought us to that point. It was a transition that we didn't really realize how impactful it would be today on the company. It was a huge impact. All good.
The way the memories worth repeating, the welcoming sense of the company to each other and to the guests that come.
You're asking a really good question. It goes to how we operate our company today. And we operate the action word, one word, is love. That's really unusual in most companies, I realize, but I can promise you at the corporate level, when we have a board meeting, this is what the CEO puts up on the screen. He says, this is where we start, and we work towards, this is the focus, and this is how we focus on our guests, and it's how we focus on the men and women who are the company. Jack and Pete, Brad Thomas sitting here, we are a microcosm of the company. The company is made up of hundreds and hundreds of men and women. It is the whole. They are the ones who make the company what it is.
So as you think back about this, is this, clearly the people who've made the company have had a big impact. Do you think that the Ozarks had more of an impact on you and Jack, or you and Jack had more of an impact on, what's that combination like?
No, that's a good question. I will tell you, and I'll defend this forever, Silver Dollar City could not exist if, let's just say, we Hugo and Mary had gone to Coffeyville, Kansas, because there was a different culture there. The Ozarks that they came down to were, people who live in New York or Los Angeles, they talk about the flyover country. They look down and say, that's Missouri. Well, they're right, and they don't know what they're missing. But rather, the larger point is that the Ozarks were a bypassed area. The men and women who lived there, who worked a living out of the ground, or cattle, or however they did it, were really, really dependent on each other and on the bounty of the ground. You could not, there was not a general store to go to. So if you wanted lye soap, you had to go see Granny Huffman. Granny Huffman was the lye soap maker, and she would make lye soap. She made great lye soap.
And she made lye soap for you, too, at this.
Absolutely. And it's good for chiggers and ticks, dirty mouth kids.
There you go.
I promise you.
You had some of all of those.
Yeah. But Granny would, if she wanted to have a hog pen, have some split rails, she'd have to go see Rex, because Rex was really good at splitting rails. Mm-hmm. And if somebody else wanted some candles, they'd have to go somewhere else, because there was no electricity. Remember, there was no store to go to, so we had to make our candles. It is that culture that was preserved in the hills that became the basis. It was the basis for what you see in Silver Dollar City today, the home of American craftsmanship. Its roots were there in Granny and Rex and Les and all the others, because they didn't do it because it was a good show. They did it because they had to, and that's because that the blessing of electricity had not arrived. And that obviously changes things. So it was to be where we are today could not have happened without that core of men and women who were pioneers in that sense. They didn't look at themselves as pioneers, but they were.
So in one of our discussions one time on this, you suggested yourself as a transplant. How long did it take before you thought your roots were there instead of somewhere else?
Oh, I don't know that I ever thought of it as woke up one morning and said, now I'm a Missourian. But as the the community evolved. There were some really, really dramatic changes happening. Table Rock Lake was a huge change. It became a hinge point for the entire community. But I was there before Table Rock Lake was. I was there before Table Rock Dam was built. And the Corps of Engineers, the entire, what you think of as the lake body now, was woods. Mm-hmm. It was woods. There were a few settlements down there along the river. But
Any of that stuff wind up in Silver Dollar City?
Oh yeah.
Now
There's
been underwater.
The front. If you're familiar with Silver Dollar City, you walk in. You go past the turnstiles and all of that, and the first building you come to is called the Hospitality House. Cut stone on the front and the back. That stone came from, it would be roughly 180 feet underwater right now. Little settlement, a 3-building settlement called Oasis. For those of you who really know Table Rock Lake, it's just south of Diving Rocks. Is where but 180 feet down. And we got permission from the Corps of Engineers to go in, and literally we burned the roofs off the building, and then we went in and harvested the stone. And they're all hand-cut stone. Just the amount of work that went into that, if you had to do it today, I don't think you could afford it.
I don't know if the average Ozarker would have asked for permission either. That's the...
Yeah. Well, we had to pay a fee. We had to pay $25.
Have the salvage rights?
Mining rights. Mining rights. And the Corps said, well, we can't have salvage rights, but we do have mining rights. So
all that changed. Yeah. You mentioned Rockaway Beach. Whenever they built the big dam, then all the cold water that came out of the little dam went into Taneycomo, which became a cold lake, which meant that the Rockaway Beach your parents came to, nobody went for that reason anymore because it was too cold, and things moved up toward the big lake.
The socioeconomic impact of that dam, of Table Rock Dam, on the entire area, not just because there was a lake there, but how it changed the visitor pattern, how it changed the business patterns, how it changed the agriculture patterns. There used to be some farming down in the valley. There's none of that. Right. Incidentally, the earliest business in the Ozarks, where people actually made money, was railroad ties. It's called tie hacking. Mm-hmm. And people would go, you got $25 for a railroad tie, square cut. They did with a broad axe. Go to Silver Dollar City today, and he's still out there hewing logs. But that's really what they did. They would make a good man could earn $1 a day, pretty good wages.
All right, let's close the chapter on acclimation. So your daughter Annie McGregor's on this board. She clearly knows where she grew up. Did your mother ever fully acclimate, do you think?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Did she blend into the community anyway like you and Jack did, or was she always...
Oh, yeah. Mary Herschend was very much an accepted part of the community.
And spectacular.
And she was Small Businessman of the Year. She was, no question, a leader. When her health started to kind of deteriorate later on. But it was... I would tell you that I think one of the hardest burdens of anybody in the family was for Mary Herschend, because she gave up way more. Jack and I didn't give up anything. We were hog heaven. Yeah. But she gave up a comfortable home, and she came down to all the things that I've covered. There was no running water, no toilets, no electricity, no telephone. Start there.
Yeah. She's there, and the three of you are now let's build the company.
That's right.
So you got this hole-in-the-ground cave, and how do you turn that into Silver Dollar City?
God is good. I mean that. We built the business of the cave attendance in the cave. In 1950, as I say, we had less than 5,000 guests going through the cave. And if you're quick on your feet, at $1.25, you now know the gross revenue of the company. By 1959, that number had built up to about 80,000. That's a lot better. It's not good enough to be a substantial business in the cave business. It's not an impressive number, even today, but it was a lot better than 5, I can assure you. And in 1959, a gentleman named Russ Pearson walked into our life. We had never met him before, and he was a walking embodiment of what a Texas cattleman should look like. But he was all hat and no cattle. He didn't have any cattle. He just looked the part. He was also a fantastic imagination and designer. He walked into our office, and we had the normal parking lot full of people. Those of you who've been to, how many of you have been to Silver Dollar City? Oh, I love you. Yeah. How many of you worked at Silver Dollar City? Show of hands. I know there are several of you out there who have. Yeah. Yeah.
How many have been to Silver Dollar City twice?
Yeah.
Exactly. Creating memories worth repeating. That's the whole purpose, is to have them come back, right? But go ahead. So he walks in, you don't have...
He walked in, and he said, I'm really compressing the story, he said, what you ought to do over there on the other side of the parking lot is build an old Ozark town, kind of a replica. And that'll bring more, remember we're in the cave business, and people will come out and we'll do some shows, and there'll be more people coming out to see that, and it'll get more people going through the cave. Well, Russ was a good salesman, and we had a good banker in Branson named Ben Parnell, who defied the bank examiners and said, I'm going to make a loan, grand total of $75,000 to build the original Silver Dollar City. It'd take a little more than that today.
But that was about $1 million then.
Yeah, yeah. It was
guys who didn't
it was
know how to
substantial.
pay it back. Yeah.
And the bank examiners gave him great grief over that for about the first half of the year. And then the loan was paid off because it
worked.
Generated people. What happened was an amazing thing, and this is a true hinge point. That summer of 1960, we started seeing way more people coming to this little place we called Silver Dollar City. And then we're going to the cave. We were doing a lot more business through the cave because of it. We went from 80,000 visitors through the cave to the preceding year to 120,000. That's significant impact in anybody's book. Big growth. Jack and I sat, this is a true story, we sat out behind the Wilderness Church, had 2 stumps, nothing as comfortable as this, a stump and a 2x12 running across the top. And Tom, quite literally, it was a board meeting.
That was your first board meeting?
One of the first board meetings. We sat behind the Wilderness Church and made a fundamental decision. We came to realize something really that we hadn't realized before. So we realized we are no longer in the cave tour business. We are now in the entertainment business. And that's a huge change. That reorients your thinking completely. It changed how we looked at what we were doing through a different set of lenses. And nothing has changed
Were you ever
since.
one of the entertainers?
I was an entertainer.
Train robber? Or
I was a train robber. I was Alfie Bolin. I was Dirty Dan Diggins, the dangerous doer of dastardly deeds. And I was Zeke Hatfield. All that. The reason I was all of those because the entire staff of Silver Dollar City constituted 13 people. And so if we're going to do a show, that's who you're going to draw from.
Right. Right.
There's the staff. That's the picture of the entire staff of Silver Dollar City
In what year?
in 1960.
1960.
1960, first year.
So what year did the Beverly Hillbillies decide?
1967.
Let's get there. Why would the Beverly, this is a #1 hit TV show, right?
Beverly Hillbillies, it takes, you got a background and a half, just a little bit.
This crowd would
They didn't just show
generally
up.
remember the Beverly
Yeah,
Hillbillies.
they didn't just show up. Don Richardson, who was our Director of Marketing, Public Relations, and all other things dealing with communication, he had an idea, and he wrote a letter to the editors of TV Guide magazine. And he said, wouldn't it be a great cover story to have a real hillbilly reviews the Beverly Hillbillies? And they wrote back and said, that's fantastic. Let's do it. Don, now I'll compress the story. Don got it done. He got it done. And Junior Cobb from Three Brothers, Arkansas. Let me know, how many of you have been to Three Brothers, Arkansas? Not many. Leon, you've not been to Three Brothers, have you? Have you? Okay.
Junior Cobb from Three Brothers, Arkansas.
Three Brothers, Arkansas.
Reviews did he have a television?
And no, he didn't have television, he didn't have electricity.
So how did he
we had to
review
bring
the
him up to where there was TV and Junior, and they published it. They published it. You cannot get better public relations than that. Springing from that became a relationship with Paul Henning, who is the creator, producer, director of the Beverly Hillbillies. And again, long story short,
And he had about 3 shows going on there.
Beverly Hillbillies, Green
Petticoat
Acres,
Junction.
and Petticoat Junction.
And
All of them hit shows, but Beverly Hillbillies was the top show. So Don sold the idea to Paul Henning that wouldn't it be great to have the Beverly Hillbillies come home? Come home, and home, in this case, was Silver Dollar City. That, my friends, was marketing genius. Really.
so in 1960, you have 13 people on the staff, and you're Dirty Dan Diggins.
That was in 60.
1967,
67.
you've got a nationally top-rated TV show coming to do, what, 5 segments?
5 segments, and they taped, film, they used film then, 5 segments in 5 days, and that ran that fall. And once again, the top show in the nation. Any of you who are in marketing or have to motivate people at all, might not be, it's not a bad tool, right? Yeah, it was marvelous. And it changed, the hinge point was this: it changed Silver Dollar City and Southwest Missouri from a nice local property into one of national standing. Now people in Schenectady or in Spokane knew of, they might not get here, but they knew of it. It was all of a sudden a real place.
And a lot of your staff were characters in that show.
Oh, absolutely.
Mayor, the blacksmith.
Yeah, Shad
maybe
Heller. Shad Heller was in the show. my oldest son's birth was announced on the show. John, it was John. Ellie Mae said, "I hear Pete Herschend had a baby," and Ma said, she said, "No, it weren't. No, it were Jody," and then they went on. But it was that I had the job of shepherding Buddy Ebsen. Buddy Ebsen, if any of you watched the show at all, is about 6'2". He was a big man. Mm-hmm. And I would take, between shots when doing anything,
Wizard of Oz.
I'd walk him around.
Daniel Boone's sidekick. Davy Crockett's sidekick.
He's was all kinds of acting. I took him by the log hewing one time. Ott Teague was our log hewer then, and Buddy was looking at it, and Ott Teague was he was not a very big man. But he was all sinew. I don't think any bones. He was just all muscle and
How do you
sinew.
spell that for the people that are going to write this story? Ott?
Bones. You want to know how to spell bones?
I want to know how to spell it. I don't know how to spell
I'm trying to help you.
How do you spell his name? Ott?
O-T-T.
O-T-T.
O-T-T. T-E-A-G-U-E.
Ott Teague. And
Yeah.
he's the
log.
the
He
rail
was
splitter.
the log hewer. So Buddy Ebsen is standing there watching him, and Ott looks up at him and knew who he was and said, "Well, Buddy, want to try this?" And Buddy said, "Well, believe I would." This is a really bad idea because that broad axe, has got a blade on it that'll take your foot off.
It goes right towards your foot, too.
Oh yeah, you're standing on the log and you're cutting right there. Bad idea, Buddy. Buddy said, "Nope, I want to try." So he gets up, takes off his jacket and takes off his vest and hat he was wearing, picks up the broad axe, and that son of a gun just chop, 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 just laid off 4 perfect blocks off the side. Ott looked up at him and said, "Well, Buddy, I guess you could work if you had to." But it's true, that's all part of the Beverly Hillbillies coming, and what that did.
Did you shut the park down the days you were filming? How did you keep people away?
We didn't, and it was a mob scene anyway. No, we allowed people out there. We just had to shepherd them. You get herd over there and herd them back over here. It was.
So that happens, has to have a big impact on your growth, and then the oil shortage, the gas shortage occurs. You want to finish up anything more about the Hillbillies, and then tell us how you weathered some of those early storms after that?
Well, there was if you reflect back to 1987, 87, yeah. The second Arab oil embargo.
I was thinking of the first one, the one in the
There were 2 of them,
70s, right.
and the second one was the one that was, because it was in the summertime. Mm-hmm. First one was in the fall, it wasn't so bad. But the second one was in the summertime. And literally, there was no gas available. And so we just put together a program where I found some refineries over in Oklahoma where I could still buy gas. And we would buy 100,000 gallons of gas at a time, bring it over, resell it to gasoline retailers at the same price we paid for it, as long as they promised to charge the same price to the public. And then we did it's called an Ozark fuel update. We did like a ski report. In the wintertime, you get how's the snow, and you get kind of hear the wind blowing in the background. And here's the Ozark fuel update, and there are 52 gas stations in the Ozark area. We didn't define that, and 38 of them. Actual number. We really knew what we were talking about. 38 of them will have gas 6 days of the week. 5 of them won't be open at all, and we put that into the 200-mile market, and people essentially knew that they could get gas to go home. It worked.
You're saying if you get here We guarantee you
We'll
we'll have
get, you
gas.
got,
We'll
we
get
got
you
a tank of gas
at least a tank.
for you to get home. Business, because the economic impact of that was very, very across the board, our business was off about 2%. Nationally, travel business was off 25% for just that reason, because people were afraid to leave home for good reason. Didn't want to do that. So that was a really, we were blessed to be able to do that.
Was COVID a big challenge?
COVID was a big challenge for us and for
How'd you deal with
everybody.
that? At Silver Dollar City.
At Silver Dollar City. We just clamped down on our operation. We stopped our building for a year, and we ran almost a normal schedule. Business attendance was way off, as you would expect, because people were not used to being around crowds. We had very, very good financial planning. That's how we got around it. I'm talking about the company, not just Silver Dollar City. It really, really worked.
One thing I also noticed in some of the things I looked at one point the federal government designated the cave a national landmark.
Yeah.
Did you ask for that?
Yes, sir.
And it didn't make things harder for you to do what you needed to do?
No,
Usually the federal government, people don't ask the federal government to do very much.
well, the federal government,
For good reason.
I will tell a Roy Blunt story that any of you who are in the travel business might know this, but this is what, Roy, 28 years ago?
Brand USA?
Yeah.
Did it in the House and the Senate both, so it would have been 11 and 9, something like that, 2009, 2011.
Okay. In any event, Roy and I were having coffee one day in Washington. I said, you know, the federal government, the United States government, spends less money on marketing travel to the United States than we spend on marketing Silver Dollar City to our guests. And the answer was the federal government spent zero. We spent considerably more than that. This guy right here picked that ball up and ran with it. And again, long story short, today the marketing budget for the United States of America in encouraging international travel coming here is at a minimum $200 million and should be more.
And it's matched by the private sector, $200
Private sector
million.
comes right in.
And you know the other countries, what we talked about that day, what Pete told me, how much other countries are spending to get us to visit them. And foreign travelers stay longer, they spend more, and even no matter how much they think they're going to like us when they come, they like us better than that. So it has a huge diplomatic impact, and they spend a whole lot more money than domestic travelers do. But Pete deserves more of the credit for that whole idea than he just took.
Oh, but you made it happen. That's what's important.
Maybe.
I think what bottom line, Silver Dollar City would not be there today. Something might be there, but Silver Dollar City as we know it would not be there today were it not for the heritage of the hills that literally came with the cave. And it's three men, Bert, Lester, and Rex. You'll hear the names. The names don't mean anything to you, but they were key to our operation. They could do anything. They had, between them, they probably had a 4th or 5th grade education, total. But Bert designed the cave train. The cable lift system on that. The engineers who built Table Rock Dam said, no, you can't do that because it goes up. It makes a 147-degree turn coming up out of the cave, and big healthy engine up here with a great gear reduction pulling on the cable, and a group of, they're called shivs, they're just place for the cable to run through down here, the engine up there is trying to pull these guys out of the ground. And that's where the engineers said, it won't work, it can't work. Bert said, will too. And it's in there today. Right. Same system is in there today.
Well, as you pointed out earlier, if you moved to the Ozarks, you had to be pretty innovative, and you definitely had to work with the tools you had rather than the tools you needed. Because you almost never had the tools you needed, and usually not anything else you really needed, but you figured out how to make that work.
Well, but that's the pioneer spirit that we inherited. We didn't cause it. I hope, I pray that we continue always to capture that in the men and women who are Silver Dollar City today. That's our gift. That's our gift to Missouri and to America, is showing people what life really was like. As long as we do that, and as long as we do it with love, we'll be
Craft
okay.
Festival, the Southern Gospel Festival, the Western Music Festival, all of that. Okay, we could talk for a long time, but it's unfair to everybody but you and me. Maybe. I want this to be about Missouri, but I want to get just a quick sense of how big the company now is that you guys built from your first.
Zach, you'll have to. We've been blessed.
I think I asked him not to show it because I didn't want to get diverted to it. But tell us just quickly about the company. How many people? How many locations? How many guests?
Presentation about Herschend Enterprise, but we are blessed. We have Silver Dollar City. As you know, we are the operators and partners for 30 plus years with Dolly Parton at Dollywood in East Tennessee. Marvelous partnership. This is one of the most amazing women in the world, and just absolutely trustworthy. The Harlem Globetrotters. We have little business, big business. We have a business based out of Sedona, Arizona, called Pink Jeeps. You'll see that in Sedona. You'll see that in Grand Canyon. You'll see it in Branson, Smokies, Vegas. Where else? We have a park was still closed down in Valdosta, Georgia. Hurricane Helene. Have they got power yet? They're open. They got power now. Yes. Okay.
So from 13 people at Silver Dollar City in 1960, how many people work for the company?
14,500.
How many guests do you have a year? How many guests do you have a year?
Brad, what are we running now total?
Almost
10.
10.
Okay, you mentioned, we're going to go one other, this is the last topic. So my wife says, don't say finally because it gives them too much hope. But the last topic is Dolly Parton books and schools. What's the only state that fully funds the Dolly Parton Imagination Library?
You have to know Dolly Parton to know that this is not a money-making proposition. This woman started Imagination Library in Sevier County, Tennessee. Whereas that's where Pigeon Forge is. Whereas that's where Dollywood is.
That's where Dolly grew up, right?
It is her home, yeah.
Yep.
Her home is about 3.5 miles from Dollywood. Her home in the valley.
Her home now.
No, not now.
When she grew up.
Yeah.
Got it.
Got a little bit bigger home now. Grew up in a cabin. She has a bigger cabin now. Dolly's dad could neither read nor write. And that was painful to him and therefore painful to her. As she became more successful, you got to remember she's been successful for 30, 40 years,
At least.
a name to be reckoned with. She went back to her home county, Sevier County, Tennessee, and she said, I know there are way too many kids in this community, in this county, who don't have books in their home. That's a true statement. That'd be well over half the homes would have nothing to read. Dolly, again, long story short, compressing it, she said, I'll start giving them children's books. And she literally was giving to every child in Sevier County children's books, little golden level books. And the governor of Tennessee called her and said, that's a marvelous idea. Can we expand that to the state? And rolling fast forward, she said, yes, they did. They expanded it to the state, although what Roy said about Missouri is absolutely true. We are the first state, the only state, that fully funds every child born as of last August, born in the state of Missouri, is, if the parents will sign up, is entitled to a book a month for every month of their life through age 5. Think about that. Yeah. It's well over 1 million books a month today.
And Dolly was here for that recognition of us doing that recently.
Yeah, she was up in
Last
Kansas
month.
City at the Folly Theater, and the governor was there to give her thanks. But she is proud of that. I've asked her, just in private conversations, Dolly, what are you really proud of in your life? Mm-hmm. That's always the answer.
Would the person that served the longest on this Missouri State Board of Education have had anything to do with that?
He was influential.
And haven't you served for over 30 years?
33.
33 years.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that.
No, best job. I've said it and I'll say it again. That was and remains the best public service job I have ever had, ever will have.
Nobody's done it better.
We made a difference.
Or longer, as it turns out. Well, thank you. What a great conversation.
Any questions?
Yeah, a couple minutes for questions. And there's a drawing for prizes here afterwards, so don't leave if you're interested in being one of the prizes. So go ahead, right back here.
So how was the name, how did you decide on the name?
Silver Dollar City.
Just happened to have the answer to that. Don Richardson, the same guy who did the Beverly Hillbillies.
This is the guy with no cattle.
Well, yeah, no, that was a different guy. That was
Okay.
That was Russ Pearson.
Beverly Hillbillies, got it.
Don Richardson. We didn't know. We had inside the family in 1960. Before we opened, we were having a large family discussion. Would be polite. As to what do we call this place? And Jack wanted to name it Ozark Mountain Village, and I argued with him. I said, you got to have proper nouns. It's got to be a noun. It can't be adjectives. Those are adjectives. Mm-hmm. And so Don Richardson said, forget it. Here's what we'll do. We will start taking anybody's money. They buy $1 worth of something and pay for it with a $5 bill. They're going to get 4 silver dollars in change. Pure genius in terms of an answer. Because that silver dollar would go into town and people would buy 3 gallons of gas for $1, by the way. 3 gallons of gas, and they'd say, but where'd you get that? And the answer would be, they'd either say, where'd you get that? And then people would say, well, out of that place called Silver Dollar City, or we got it out there, and he'd say, you got it out there, you've been out there, or we've been out there. But it worked. We used silver dollars in change for 2 years, had to quit it in the 3rd year because the gals who ran change back and forth started getting muscles. It was too heavy. These things weigh a lot. You know, $100 worth of these will weigh you down on one side. And 1960, the season started Memorial Day and ended Labor Day. Started, and it was like you turned off the faucet.
What's your biggest season now?
We are running essentially 10 months. Brad, is that about right? Brad's the senior vice president of the entire Missouri operation. He's here to check and make sure I said most things right.
Christmas?
Christmas is now, November and December is now,
October, November?
November, December are the 4 biggest months of the year.
And how often have you been the #1 Christmas designation travel spot?
Oh, we've been the #1 for 7 years.
7 years.
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah. Christmas, we started out. We were by then we were operating to the end of October. We had craft festivals running to the end of October, and it was very, very successful. But in October we shut it off, and everybody, guests and customers and staff, all went away, and we were having another good inside the family argument. I had been to a couple of properties in Pennsylvania, as a matter of fact, in West Virginia, in West Virginia, and I saw they were doing a marvelous Christmas business, different than what we do at Silver Dollar City today, but it was there, and people were really wanting to travel. So I came back arguing that we should try this, and okay, and grumble, but said, yeah, all right, we'll try it. And the first lighting, we were going to light the Silver Dollar City for Christmas, and the first lighting consisted of green and red incandescent bulbs strung on a string around the perimeter of the square, and played Christmas music. That was appropriate. Santa Claus wasn't there. We probably served wassail. Was been our greatest concession. And we debated whether we should charge people at all. So we said, okay, well, we will.
You opted to charge.
We opted to charge, not much, but we opted to charge. And we were blown away. We couldn't, the restaurants in town were telling, the restaurant operators were saying, what did you guys just do? You know, what happened? Because all of a sudden, now I had to go to the grocery store and buy eggs and milk and bread and ham and bacon because we had so many customers.
One more thing to do.
Yeah, well, that grew. We then realized, oops, this may work. And so we started expanding it. And today, I'm just delighted. We will this November, December, we will have we'll put up 6,250,000 lights. They're already up. You can't put them up overnight. We started on those lights in August, getting them up in the high buildings.
And then you turn them on what day?
Yeah.
17th of November? First Saturday of November.
Yeah.
How much did you pay for the last Christmas tree?
The last Christmas tree,
The big one,
the 75-foot tree, Brad?
$2 million.
But we'll have
Gotta
a
see
sale
it.
one
Gotta
day.
see it.
Somebody want to buy it.
Okay, we've got to quit. We've got to
Get a bigger
Hey,
one.
Pete, thanks so much. Thanks so much.
Well, I thank you.